Hello, listeners. It's Mike Bedford here on the Be Brilliant People podcast presents ND Superstars. This is episode 2 of our new series of podcasts, and today I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Theo Smith. Hi, Theo.
Woo! Hello, good to be here.
It's an absolute pleasure and a privilege to have you on the show today. But just let me kind of give you a little bit of an embarrassing kind of warm up first, and kind of plug you and kind of celebrate all the great things that you do. And I love your T-shirt, by the way. It fits in very nicely with the bee branding. We had a little chat about bees off air. We might pick some of that back up in this conversation. But let me just big up Theo for a few moments. So Theo Smith. Known Theo now for quite a while, and we met through LinkedIn. I have to say he's an absolutely fantastic person to know, is Theo, and we've kind of like built a great relationship, and we continue to do so. But he's a neurodiversity evangelist. He's an advocate, a champion, an activist. He's an award-winning co-author of the amazing book Neurodiversity at Work, which if you haven't got this book and you're interested at all in neurodiversity, it's an absolute must read, resource, tool, source of knowledge and information. I can't recommend it highly enough, and you'll see that if you kind of check out my reviews on Amazon as well of this book as well. He's a speaker, he's a LinkedIn influencer, a podcaster, an entrepreneur, background in talent and recruitment, and just an all-round amazing guy. So that's my kind of like warm up to Theo, and there's a lot more to Theo than that, but that's just kind of like some of the highlights, if you will, of Theo. But Theo, introduce yourself to our listeners who might not know who you are, and just tell us a little bit in your own words about who is Theo Smith.
Cool. Okay, just to flip that, thanks, Mike. That's a really lovely introduction. To flip that for people, I'm also battered, bruised, broken, and fixed many times over. I'm kind of pulled together by stitches and fake pieces of material or artificial pieces to kind of hold me together. And that's the reality, right? We're all human. So a lot of these things, I think, not necessarily that I've shared this in the past, but just having the conversation before we started this, Mike, around the coaching piece, right? I think part of all of the things that I do and that I've done is like coaching myself, and looking after myself. So the drama, the performing on stage, the doing talks and all of that came from my early years of being a young person who was lost, who was struggling, who had all different types of problems, right? Struggling with the world. And the acting piece, the drama, was my therapy. That's where I could be somebody else. I could express myself. I could work with other people. No barriers. It didn't feel like school, which I found really difficult. It was like the barriers were taken away. You could work with other people in this really amazing world that was about the imagination. And therefore, I could express myself in ways that I just couldn't in any other sphere of life. So everything I now do has come from that place. And it doesn't mean I still don't struggle. I still don't find life difficult in many ways, but I now use those early experiences in every facet aspect of what I do. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I do the podcast. It's like I'm creating these spaces for me to be coached and mentored by people, right? I get them onto a podcast and I talk to them, and there's therapy. I write a book because it's something I really struggle with and I can't write. It's therapy. I basically solve lots of the problems that are in my life through writing this book with somebody else who I care deeply about, Amanda Kirby, and who I respect. And therefore, I found an excuse to spend a ridiculous amount of time with somebody I held in high regard, right? Imagine being able to do that. So I've orchestrated this in all different aspects of my life. I struggled in recruitment. I didn't know where I fitted in, who I was. So then I embraced neurodiversity as part of that piece of work. And I evangelized, I ran with it, I helped others understand what it looked like, because that's my gift I could give to other people. So I'd say that's what I am, Mike. I just want to spend time with people. I never know where I am, where I fit in. So I find ways of squeezing into every area of the place where I shouldn't. At university, I went as a late student. all the lecturers used to say, Theo, why do you always turn up in all the celebration events, in all the dinners, in all the nights out, in every single year of the university? You're always there, you're everywhere. It's because I never really knew who was my main friend, where I fitted in, what group. So I just got myself out everywhere. And you know what? That's what I need. But that's what I do now, Mike. I get myself out everywhere. It still gets me into trouble. Not everybody likes me or my way of thinking or whatever else. But I just focus on giving, and hopefully that helps me in myself develop in the way that I need to be a good person, a good father, a good employee, whatever it may be, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I definitely think you do a fantastic job in terms of giving. But I also think don't underestimate the impact that you have on others as well, because I know you talked about it, kind of it's a way of kind of almost like self-expressionism, right, out there, as well, and creating like that kind of like that image of Theo Smith out there as well. But actually, that Theo Smith as well is really important to people as well, and really kind of inspires and empowers people out there as well, would be my kind of thinking about that. Do you see yourself as kind of someone who empowers others and kind of who people look up to as a role model and are inspired by?
I don't know. It's really hard, and I because it is like it's maybe the brain, right? Or I always need to keep it busy and active, and I'm trying to focus on things. So in that sense, I'm constantly trying to push things out, and that can have a positive and negative impact. For some people, they find that helpful. For others, they may find what I do overwhelming, and therefore they want to shut me off and press delete or whatever it may be, or block me, or I don't know, right? Because we all have that in our lives. Somebody who's too much. And maybe I'm too much for people. Maybe for other people, I'm reassuring and helpful, and that's what I have to remind myself all the time, Mike. Because for one person coming up and telling me, Theo, what you do really positively impacts me and my family and my life and the way that I see myself or my child, I can equally get another person from our community, right, who's telling me, Theo, don't like you, don't like what you're about. So and I listen. I try and come to everything I do with a level of honesty, transparency, because that's the way I am. That's the way my brain works. I find it hard to not be that. So I find it sometimes feels like I exist on a knife's edge of like torment, and then like I basically I'm harming myself by some of the responses I get, but then I'm healing myself by these other responses. And the reality is, it is a seesaw. And what's really interesting is it's often it's the community that I'm in that is pushing me into those two places. It's something I've been thinking about a lot more as I've got more visibility. So yeah, I see some of the positive impact I have on some people, but it's not for everyone. So it's a daily challenge of getting that balance. And I've seen lots of people like you and I, Mike, who've dropped out of this because what they can't deal with is the negative side that comes with the positive work that you do.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point as well. I think there's two things that I observe about that, Theo. I think there's for me, what you are is you really authentic, and that's what really resonates with me. Is authenticity is kind of like my core value, and I surround myself by authentic people. And I think for me, it comes down to, I think we had a conversation, didn't we, previously, about kind of like how important it is to surround yourself with people that lift you up rather than pull you down, and kind of build that tribe around you of that kind of like positive energy that drives you forward. And of course, we're human beings. We're never going to connect with everybody. That's fine. And I think we just have to accept that is going to always be the case. And likewise with myself, I know there'll be people out there who think, Mike, you're just talking absolute load of shite, right? I don't like you at all. I don't like what you are. I don't like you don't represent me, my experiences. And I totally hear that, but that's absolutely fine. But can I change that? No. Do I want to change what your experience and your thinking is? No, that's your experience and your thinking. If it changes as a result of kind of what message you're hearing from kind of what we're talking about, then that's fine. If I want to be positively influenced by us and what we're saying and everything, that's fine. But if you're not hearing that, if that's not connecting with you, that's absolutely fine. I think, and I don't know what your thoughts are about this, Theo, but for me, it's kind of like and what I've learned over the course of my life and the journey that I'm still on is it's much more important now to actually have those people around you that just fill you full of that positive energy and lift you up. And again, it's okay for those people who kind of just don't connect with that. What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's true. It's really important. Not everybody has the same life experience. Not everybody's come on the same journey, and not everybody's faced the same level of frustration. You talk to some people who culturally, the society they've grown up in, the country they've grown up in, the level of stigma
Yeah.
around not just neurodiversity or being autistic or ADHD or
Mm.
whatever it may, but a number of other factors that may impact them in terms of who they choose as their life partner or sexual partner, whatever else.
Mm.
All of these things, you can add them up. And then based on where they've come from, their level of challenge and life experience may be far removed from mine.
Mm.
Therefore, I cannot
Yeah.
be everything to that person. I cannot guide them in a way or connect with them in a way that somebody else I may be able to connect with. And therefore, my experiences may frustrate them
Mm.
because of the distance between those two experiences. However, that should not eliminate my experiences in life. That should not say that mine are not important and not valid, because the reality is there are people who need to see and hear those experiences, but there are still people that need to hear and see those experiences. So what I found really important now is I see a lack of, and not just me, right? We all know there's a lack of visibility, variety of voices. So how do we get more of those voices into the mainstream? Mainstream being where more people are likely to see and hear those voices. And actually, I think it is important that we have our tribe and community that helps protect some of our thinking and challenge it in a positive way. But then we do need to take it outside of those four walls, because it's those people who also need to be, who really don't understand it, who need to be helped to better understand some of the challenges and opportunities for change that we see. So if we only live in the small community that we feel very comfortable in, unfortunately, those communities then become disconnected from one another. And this is where we face a risk of, in a world where we can become more connected, we become less connected. And we've seen that, right? Politically, economically, through whatever belief you may have. If you end up in this microcosm of a community and conversation, then the second you step out of it, it's almost like the pain of hearing other viewpoints is so powerful. All you want to do is either run back into that community and hide away, or you want to fight hard against that. And that is not productive way of having positive debate and discussion to get the changes that we need for the future of this planet, future of political, the challenges that we face, and if we think about climate change and ensuring that we have a planet to live on, like all of these things, they're all interlinked. They do not, one does not exist. So I'm a massive believer in finding a tribe and the security within that. But then some of us have to be brave and stand out and take some of the punches, which is what it feels like sometimes.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think you have to absolutely keep yourself open to open dialogue with people that don't agree with you and don't see your viewpoint. I mean, a great and what you're talking about is preventing groupthink, right? And I think a great example of that would be kind of like some of the tone deaf type of journalism, I think, that we've kind of like seen recently, right? In some big newspapers, utterly kind of like what we've just talked about there, totally dispelling like people's lived experiences and putting it down to like a fad. So you can feel the blood boiling in you when you kind of like talk about that. But I think your point there is well made. I mean, if you look back at some of the greatest historical leaders, and I think like Nelson Mandela, who would actively engage with those leaders of apartheid, who were kind of like the very antithesis of everything that he stood for and represented, but he was able to kind of rise beyond that and engage with those people and talk to those people. And essentially that's what you need to do. And I think about that kind of like that journalist that wrote that article. They're some of the people that we need to engage with and talk to. as well, who fundamentally, that not necessarily just him, but people that think like that, who kind of like think, for example, I don't know, just ADHD, not just singling out ADHD, but ADHD is just like a trendy fad, right? No, you got to engage with those people. You got to engage with those people externally, be they ND or be they NT, so be they neurodivergent or be they neurotypical. You have to engage with a broad set of people, don't you? Regardless of whether they agree with you and your viewpoint or not.
So that's really interesting, and it makes me think of how I grew up, where I grew up, and like I grew up in a working class family, right? That went on to do well, marginally well, depending on how you define it. But my parents were activists, and they were really big part of the anti-apartheid movement in South Wales. So I grew up in a very interesting world where our house was quite open to people who were quite politically active and engaged.
Yeah.
And there were always very interesting conversations going around the table from a very young age, and very influential people in the South Wales movement that would be around our house, right? People who became political leaders and activists challenging the status quo globally. And so in my mind, I am not necessarily, when you think about that and you think about my mum and dad, we're not necessarily the obvious people who were a big part of the anti-apartheid movement, maybe, but that's the lesson, right? It's we can't be everything to everybody, but all of us have to get involved at moving the boundaries of where these conversations happen, right? We have to support others. We have to be we have to lift others up to be able to have their voice, right, in the areas where they may not be seen and may not be heard. And I think that's probably a big part of what I think about now. I spent time thinking that maybe that the way that I was going to create change was through the political agenda and through the education agenda, right? But I realized that was really difficult. And then I made a shift to think, well, I've got one life and I'm getting older. I can influence the world of business far quicker. And actually, I can work with others who already do incredible work, like Amanda Kirby, who are already connecting with, in this instance, the Welsh Government, but the wider political agenda, much better and for much longer than I've been doing. So it's what can we do, right, to change the world for the better in whatever area that we want to, and how can we widen the sphere of engagement and interest beyond the four walls of those areas. Maybe our four walls, it may be the four walls of other people with other experiences and stuff. But that's where, when we start to come together, when we lean these individual experiences and they start to connect and we push them out, that's where you see this scale of change and transformation. It's by working together that we're able to achieve that. But I feel there's like this pain point that can inhibit us and stop us from doing it. Because we feel maybe that's not an area we should be having the conversation in. But so you need to be mindful of that, of not stepping over where other people should be having a voice, but where can we connect together to amplify that piece of work? Because that's where neurodiversity is at the moment. I think we're in danger, for me, of it's a mouthpiece, right? At the moment, there's a lot of talk. And the shift to action is quite a difficult one. And we've seen it in other areas of D&I space. And we now have to take it from, the rhetoric, the politicians who think, oh, this is great, I can use this, to help me, rather than I can use this as my calling to be able to make real significant long-term change. It's hard. But that is the kind of the curve in change that we now need to push through. And I think the good thing is there's a lot of people starting to get involved. We just have to ensure we activate a lot of people who really are committed to real long-term sustainable change within this space, because that's where it matters. 5 years to get a diagnosis for my child is not good enough, right? But I don't see that changing anytime soon. So what can we do to really make a difference? And for me, it's through organizations, because I can transfer the mind of a HR leader today. That means they change some of the systems and processes tomorrow. And that's what I want to be seeing happening. But I need to help them. We need to help them, right, to be able to achieve that. Many hands make light work. So we need to do this together, not in isolation.
Yeah, no, totally. I'll just play back some of the stuff I heard there, Theo, as well. about that playing to your strengths, how important that is, which I completely subscribe to as well. But working with others to do so, to make change as well, because that's how that has impact. Then that leads to action. But I'm really curious, and I'd like to pick up on you on that action, because action and activism and activist are quite strong, powerful words, right? And they can be quite scary to a lot of people. And for me, to become an activist, that has to be a place where you're able to self-advocate as well, right? So what would you say to people, to our listeners who are listening to this, who really kind of get what we're saying, but they're kind of lurking in the background, but they don't have the confidence yet to self-advocate? How do you start self-advocating?
Oh, interesting. So for me, I've always lived on the edge, and I've always, if I'm on the edge, I jump, right? So when I was younger, I got into a lot of trouble because if I was on the edge, I'd jump. If I was about to do something really bad, I'd just do it because I saw no other way to not do. Now, when you start to change that mindset and start to realize that you don't always have to make those poor decisions that can have a real detrimental negative impact on your life, you can step to one side and make a different decision, or you can utilize that energy for positive action, right? So I'm about to do something. Well, why not use all that energy that would normally make me do something bad to do something good? And when I started to realize that, I could start to make those simple adjustments to put that energy into, I guess it's that if you're an activist, you may you may do something that's deemed as criminal activity, and that can impact negatively on other people, right? Because you think it's the right thing to do because it gets the most views on what you're trying to achieve, but ultimately you're hurting other people by doing it. Right. And then you can use that energy to do something that still has impact, but you're not hurting anybody else to be able to do it. It may impact on you as an individual, but do you see where you can start to think about some of those changes? So that's for somebody who's like me, but for a lot of people, they may not have even been in that life experience. So for them, they may have struggled just to have the voice in any way, shape, or form. I think in that instance, I would start to lean on the shoulders of others. And this is where community is really important, that you can start to share some of those experiences and ideas, and somebody can help and facilitate you on how you can share some of that without putting yourself at risk. So if somebody who's always been at risk, it's not hard for me because I spent all my life in risky places. But for somebody who's never done that, the opposite, they may almost shy away from it at every point. Any opportunity for risk, they're 3 miles away. Then they can start to work with others who can help them maybe push the boundaries, but in a safe way that doesn't put them in the risk that may cause them severe anxiety and stress, i.e. the type of anxiety and stress that keeps you up at night, that can stop you and inhibit you doing lots of other things, or literally put your life at risk. So I think that's what we need to think about. And that's where communities, we need to be really careful around the communities. One, the communities that we build, and two, who we're surrounded by within those communities, because people have got their own agendas, and we've got to be careful that people don't take advantage of us, because we've got a lot of vulnerable people within this community. And I'm conscious of that because I take so much risk and I jump. Sometimes I may do it with somebody near me and not realize it, and so then I have to go back and maybe think about the impact I have on that individual. At doing something risky near them that can impact them. So I think we just need to be mindful. It's not always possible because we all have to live our own different lives, and we all have to lean into our own strengths. But I think we shouldn't be imposing some of that risk or putting pressure on individuals to do things that they may do because they feel they have little choice, and therefore they do it, and then the long-term impact on them and their mental health and well-being is significant. And I think when you see commercial interest in a topic like neurodiversity, there is high levels of risk of people being mistreated, misused, misguided as part of communities where they think there is trust. So I'm also very mindful of that at the moment as well, Mike. And I think every single one of us that has a level of visibility has some responsibility and accountability to try and look after others. And where we get it wrong to hold our hands up and try and put it right.
Yeah, no, some really great points in there, Theo. Thank you, and thanks for sharing your thoughts on that as well. I think just to bring you back on that strengths piece. Now, I'm not afraid to kind of tackle some of the thornier kind of language, perhaps within our community and externally outside of our community as well. And one of the things I think that comes up quite a lot is the reference to neurodiversity or neurodivergence being a superpower. Tell us about that and tell us what your thoughts are around superpowers.
So I really annoy people all the time with language. And if you read the book, you will see I try to use as many terms as possible to be as inclusive to everybody as possible. Can't make everybody happy, right? But I try to flip between different terms. Neurodiverse, neurodivergent really annoys people. That's a whole other topic. I could speak to you for half an hour on that, right? Personal preference, but other people argue it's not. I'm breaking the English language. Right. But you know, I
You're allowed to do that though, aren't you? You're Welsh, so you can do that, can't you?
I can do that, yeah, I'm Welsh. Well, the Welsh language is quite restricted, but the English language isn't, right? But we can. My wife is a brilliant academic. She's one of the most brilliant people I know in terms of academically brilliant around the English language. So I get the benefits of being able to be challenged and challenge one of what I think is the most brilliant minds within that space. So. But we'll put that to one side for a minute and focus on the superpowers, right?
Yeah.
This comes back to life experience, where you've come from, what's impacted you, how you feel about yourself. And we've got the same challenge in disability, where you can find somebody who, by their life experiences, will say, never refer to me and superheroes ever.
Yes.
And somebody will go, I see the way I am, my being is a superpower to me because it stands me out as different to other people, right? And that is a superpower in itself, right? So the very two opposing views of people who may, on the face of it, have many similarities in terms of their journey and life experiences, if we don't go too deep, but on the face of it, right? Now, the reason, and I don't go on about neurodiversity being a superpower. I actually don't talk much about that. However, I do talk about eliminating crypto. What I'm trying to, I've got a visual mind, Mike, right? So I'm always trying to show things in images.
Visualize it for us.
Yeah, so I'll turn around and say that part of my podcast is eliminating kryptonite and enabling superheroes. Yeah. So if you've got kryptonite in a room, the most incredible human being, if they're Superman or superhuman or whatever, and you put something like kryptonite, they can no longer do anything. They could fly a minute ago, they could shoot lasers from their eyes, they could do all these incredible things. Because of the kryptonite in the room, they cannot do anything. Now, I am telling you, when you put me in a situation where I have to focus on remembering stuff, or you want me to write on a blackboard and spell, I am absolutely like destroyed. I'm telling you, I'm destroyed. I panic, I sweat profusely. I go back to the child who was 6 or 7, stood in front of the blackboard, feeling like I had no value. And I remember that moment more than ever, because I now see it happening to my daughter, where she comes home every day and goes, Daddy, why can every single other person in the class count to 100 in French and I can? Daddy, why can every other person do times tables and I can? And it's traumatic. And she's faced with that every single day, and I was faced with it every single day. And I'm telling you, that is kryptonite. Now, okay, superpowers. What I mean by superpowers in my context, other people may have a different view, is it stops me from doing the things that I can do well. Right. And the things that I can do well, other people tell me are not typical. The way that I present, when you take away all of the barriers, I'm told is not like anybody else. The way that I communicate is not like many other people. The way that I write, I can't write properly with a pen. I can't spell. I can't hold grammar. But people like the way I write, because I write in a way that I think and speak. And people find that unusual and engaging. So yes, I may spell. Yes, I may get grammar incorrect, but I create a visual experience for people that they may not get through other written language. So do I not write because so many people tell me your grammar is terrible
Yeah.
You should not write.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, English experts may not like it. My wife
Yeah.
could correct me 10 times over.
Yeah.
She does sometimes. She helps out, but knowing that I have my own voice, so she tries not to ruin that. She
Yeah.
may just help me in certain areas where I may really struggle. But if I just let my wife, as an English expert, take over my written language, it would no longer be my voice. It would
Yeah.
be hers, and it
Yeah.
would be brilliant. And they may buy her books 10 times more than they buy mine. But
Yeah.
the people like me need a voice like me.
Yeah.
Right? They don't need a voice like her
Yeah.
because it doesn't speak to them,
No.
because they don't have brilliant grammar. They can't spell. They can't write with a pen.
Yeah.
They get embarrassed when they get asked to stand up and write on a board, even at the age of 40. Even
Yeah.
with all the things I've achieved, I still feel like I'm
Yeah.
worthless the minute you ask me to do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think when we talk about superpowers, yes, I understand some people don't attribute them to superpowers. That is okay. I'm not
Yeah.
saying you, Mike,
Yeah.
have to have superpowers.
Yeah.
I just want my daughter to feel value in a world that actually values her very little in the context of the current education system. And that's something I can do for her. You
Yeah.
need to do something for your children and for yourself to ensure
Yeah.
you maintain your own mental health and well-being in a world that is very challenging, where many people are struggling with mental health and well-being. So you can see I get a bit passionate about that subject, but that's what I mean by it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody can choose how they interpret it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to impose it upon anyone else. It's just, I think there's a lot of people it resonates with, and it's as simple
Yeah.
as that.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thanks very much for sharing that as well. It's about context, isn't it? It's
It
about
is.
context, and it's about applying it in your own context. And language. I mean, language is a funny thing, isn't it? Language, it can be polarizing, it can be uniting, it can be dividing. But ultimately, if we're using language and we're being respectful of others at all time, and we respect that people have their own experiences and they associate or they don't associate, I think that's fine, as well. And you will associate the language with your experience, right? And thinking about kryptonite, it's a really interesting one as well. I totally really like the whole kryptonite scenario. I think of potentially then is kryptonite actually society, education, and the workplace?
Yeah, and systems and processes. That's what I
Hmm.
mean. Kryptonite is things within our lives that can be removed. That is
Yeah.
it. It's as simple as that. And we inadvertently, the worst thing, Mike, is because of what we've been taught, because of where we've gone, because of us always listening to others tell us they know better than us about
Mm,
ourselves, right?
mm,
Whether it's doctors, whether it's teachers, whether
mm,
it's people in our community say,
mm,
Theo, you can't use that because this is the proper thing. If I
mm.
spend too much time listening to them, I get away from what helps me, right?
Yeah.
And they want to impose their thinking on me, saying, no, you must think in this way. That doesn't help me. And then what happens is, because I listen to these voices,
Yeah.
I allow, or even I put kryptonite in my own world, in
Yes.
myself, in my own
Yeah.
mind. I'm self-harming.
Yeah.
And physically, kids self-harm because they feel this pain that other people are putting upon them, that life experiences are putting upon them, that it is so much that they don't know what to do with that pain. And therefore they're trying to eliminate that pain. And I feel that neurologically, this is what we do. We're allowing, or we're putting kryptonite onto ourselves because we're told it is good for us. We're
Yeah.
giving ourselves drugs. We're going into
Yeah.
systems and processes that harm us
Yeah.
because we're told it is good for us. And it may be good for some, but it's not good for others. And I've got
Yeah.
much better at going, that really hurts me. I'm going to
Yeah.
try, not always possible,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I'm going to try not to get myself bogged down in admin because somebody else tells me everybody's got to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
find ways to deal with it because
Yeah.
it hurts me and harms me. And
Yeah.
somebody telling me I've got to do the times tables because everyone has to do them, it's harming me. It is actually harming me. It's having an impact on my brain that makes me feel unhappy,
Yeah.
and therefore long enough that can put yourself at risk. And we
Yeah.
need to do better at supporting others at eliminating this kryptonite, or at supporting others at taking it out of their lives where they can, so
Yeah.
that they can replace it with things to have a positive impact and help them lean into their strengths, their
Yeah.
superpowers, or however you want to define it.
Strengths, gifts, superpowers. Whatever.
Things they
Whatever.
like doing, things they like obsessing about, things they like
Yeah.
hyper focusing on,
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? Things that give them power.
Yeah. Because ultimately, when you focus on your strengths, it gets you to where you need to get to. When you focus on your challenges, your kryptonite, that thing's always going to hold you back. That's going to stop you. That's going to harm you as well. And that's not to take away that experience from you. Absolutely, that's part of the experience as well. But what can you do to mitigate some of those things? Some of those things can be outsourced. Some of those things you can advocate for, and some of those things are going to be there. But you're aware of that as well, I think, is what you're saying as well.
Important thing is knowing what they are. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing, Mike, that people don't, because people keep telling you what you should be good at, what you shouldn't be good at, what you
Yeah.
should do, what you shouldn't do, how you should feel, how you should react, how you should respond. We spend so much time masking because we're like,
Yeah.
we've got to try and fit in, that
Yeah.
we forget or we miss or we don't understand the things that hurt and harm us.
Yeah.
And then we spend too much time in that place, and that's where we really struggle. For most people, they just need some help and support to understand what their challenges are, what hurts them, what harms them.
Yeah.
And then once they understand that, which is really hard because they've not been able to see it before, so you're lifting the lid off what harms and hurts them and challenges them, and then they can start to work towards
Yeah.
removing them. Because if you go to your manager, I've only posted about this recently, you go to your manager and say, I'm autistic, I need help. Right, your manager goes, oh no, they're autistic. I've seen stuff on the news about autism and they like 24/7 care and they're going to be a problem and they don't like this and they don't like that. Oh, what am I going to do with this? Right? Boom, massive wall up.
Yeah.
You go to a manager and go, I'm really struggling with the environment, the noise, the lights. It's triggering some migraines. I get visual aura. I find the swirly carpets really distracting. It's all part of the way my brain's made up. But all of these things, what they're doing is they're making my brain work 10 times as hard, which means I'm getting worn out midday. And then I'm really struggling to focus on what I need to do to deliver my work. Right. So it's affecting my productivity.
Yeah.
What can we do to help with that? That gives the manager something to go, right, well, we can't just take you out of the environment because everybody else here, right? But so that's going to be a challenge, right? And maybe it's because you've got to be on the phone all day because customer service, well, I don't know, right? But you can start to work back then, right? Here's the things you absolutely can't do. Here's the things we might be able to do. And here's the things that actually we can do really quickly. And then you can start to work through them. And I think that's one of the big barriers we have with managers is they immediately jump to no because of fear around what they've just said. Autism or ADHD may mean a tribunal in court, may mean problems. I may be in trouble here. Oh, I'm going to have to walk on eggshells. Oh, right, I'm going to run away and hide and not talk about this. Rather than this person's telling me they can be more productive or have a better experience, be happier, if we consider how we can make adaptations here, and here. But again, most employees, they may be aware they're autistic or dyslexic or ADHD, but they may not have been given the support at any point in their life to understand what they should do with that. And that is fundamentally what needs to change now, at the point of moving from us talking about it to having real actions that can transform. And not one by one. This is organizations could do this across all their employees. And it would benefit everybody. I know we say that, but they had focus on the people that really need it. Right? It's not they do it for everybody. And I'm not diluting it. I'm saying focus in on the people who really need it, and we will learn from those experiences. And once we learn from those experiences and we really help those individuals, naturally we'll be able to translate that to wider change and transformation in organizational structures and support systems and mechanisms to get the best out of people, right? And that is a positive impact to the world. Why wouldn't we want to do it?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And if I might just take you back to the autistic employee, then that's able to ask and understand and understands what their self-advocacy is and understands how to self-advocate to ask for what they need, right? To get the actual support and the tools that they need to enable them to do them and to have that great conversation. What you described there, I think, was the perfect open, honest and authentic conversation, right? But we're realists as well, and we understand that that's kind of not how it plays out the majority of the time as well. So what would your advice be for the autistic or the ND employee who hasn't kind of reached that point yet where they can feel they can have that open and honest, authentic conversation with their line manager to ask for what they need? What would your advice be? What would your tips be there for them? How could they go about doing that?
Yeah, good point. So the guy who wrote the article about ADHD being, blown out of all proportion,
Yeah.
he theoretically is a manager.
Yes.
Some other journalist who may be autistic and has not shared with him,
Yeah.
reads that article that he has shared.
Yeah.
That employee should not be going to that manager and
Yeah.
asking for help around their autism, right?
Yeah.
Well, like, in my view, that is like putting yourself in immediate severe risk.
Yeah.
That he reflects the views of other people, otherwise he wouldn't be writing that article, right? He knows
Yeah.
it's going to get a spike in interest, and he knows
Yeah.
there's going to be plenty of people going, yeah, oh, I agree with that, or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That proportion of people are managers,
Yes.
right? So I'm not saying that people should go and tell their manager, but what they do need to do is they need to better understand themselves. So we can't now, as a community, go,
Yeah.
right, I'm autistic, therefore I'm owed something by managers, by people, no, I need to act, I need to help myself, right? Because I might not be helped by others. Actually, the evidence shows at the moment you won't be helped by others, and actually there's still too much stigma around this. That's why we still need to do many more conversations, and the top of organizations need to manage this down through middle management, right? Because that's where the problems are happening, and change perception. So if you're an individual who's worried about how your manager may receive that because you've got no evidence to show that they're going to receive it well, or to the contrary, I would say start to focus in on yourself, right? If you don't know what harms you, what hurts you, what challenges you, what you find really difficult, you really need to spend some time understanding that, right? There is support out there, there's communities, but remember, don't take one person's view, right? Because we've not all got it right, we're all learning, and somebody could tell you, oh, this really hurts me, or this really bothers me, here's how to fix it. It doesn't work for you and you panic. I was told when I was diagnosed with dyslexia at 21 at university, mature student, I was given a load of things to use. None of them worked. So I didn't ask for help again for 20 years. That's the reality, right? So you got to be careful, because if stuff don't work for you, you may throw the baby out with the bathwater and never go back again. So you have to take this a very cautious, slow burning approach to better understanding yourself, right? What hurts you, what harms you, where does that exist in your life, your personal life? Where does that exist in your work life? Where does that exist in your relationships? Right? And if you can start to understand them, it doesn't mean I still have challenges where my wife wants to discuss the detail. I want to know about this bill. I want to know about that, because she's focused on the detail. I've come back. I'm overwhelmed already. I'm about to explode, right? As an adult. And I'm just, those moments still happen, because she needs to get this out, and I'm in a state of mind where I can't cope with it. And we get to a point where it's like, and then we have to both look at each other and go, right, okay, this ain't the right time. Let's step away. So you don't stop those moments, but you start to understand them. That means you can step away, and you can come back at a later time. It's the same with a manager. It's the same with a teacher of your child or whatever. You can feel, especially somebody who's ND, you can often feel almost like the boiling energy, the stress, the frustration, that I start to almost like everything goes hazy. It's the same thing I used to get as a kid before I used to get into a fight or something, like everything goes a bit misty. And it's like knowing, okay, that's a real trigger point for me. I'm about to snap. You need to step all the way back to go, what were the moments? What were the journey? Why did I get to that point? How did it affect me? Because then that really positive impacts you in terms of your working relationships in all facets and aspects of your life. If you can take that part and start to think about that, then you can start to think about how you can work with a manager, guide them without having to go in and go, I'm autistic, which may come later. But first of all, you can start to drip feed some of that with, I'm struggling a bit with delivering things on time because X, Y, and Z. I'm getting a bit distracted. Is there any way that we can tweak some of these things? I think if we did this, this, and this, it might help you. And you'll get a lot of people that say it's organizations that should be giving us options. Well, yes, in a perfect world, it should, but we're not there.
No.
Right? We're not, and technology is developing and transforming at such a rapid rate. As individuals, if we want to see the transformation, sustainable transformation in this world, we need to take some individual ownership of that to be able to support it. Not everyone like that. I think that's the reality of the situation. It's, you know, collaboration, and that collaboration starts with the individual.
Know thyself, as one, I think, was a Greek philosopher once said. Someone will pull me up on that and say, no, Mike, actually it wasn't a Greek philosopher, but feels right. But some fantastic reflections there, Theo. Thank you so much. And I tell you what, I took from this is just some of what I took from, but I really like that kind of what hurts you, what harms you, what enables you piece as well. I think that's really useful reflections for some of our listeners potentially to take away and think about. And I really liked the part where you kind of shared as well about the, you know, actually, and it's a really valid point, that there's going to be a lot of, not all, but there's going to be a lot of line managers out there like that guy. I'm not even going to name him because I don't think he deserves to be named, but like that guy that wrote that horrible article who think, feel, and act like that, and don't have that empathy or connection despite their own personal experiences with their own family, I might add as well. And again, I'm not going to name and shame, but if people know, they know. But finally, Theo, I think we did say we tried to keep each other to time, didn't we, on this? And I think we've already failed and broken our own promise to each other on that one, which that doesn't surprise me at all. And that's on both of us, that one. We've kind of both broke our promise to each other there, which doesn't surprise me, and I can live with it, as I'm sure you can. But what would be your reflections and takeaways from this conversation and this podcast today that you'd like to share?
So I think I mentioned at the very beginning, and then it's kind of led on to everything we've then discussed. It's around that. It is around that coaching piece and around self-reflection and thinking about, you know, the actions that we take and the impact those actions have on others and the impact those actions have on ourselves. Yeah. And I think it's really important that we consider how we treat ourselves, how we see ourselves, and then how we utilize that to see, treat, and ultimately support others. Because I think, you know, for me, it's about working together. You know, I get energy from working with other people. And that doesn't always mean I need to be in the same room as them, but the collaborating with people energizes me. And I think that's the way that I'll achieve sustainable change in this world. And I've got one life, I've got one family, and therefore I see it as one chance to really give this a go. And I think the other thing is it's not, I think it's easy for people outside to look in and think that this is easy. It is not. I also have to, on this work, have to try and fund myself and find a way to make this sustainable in terms of it being something that can pay for me, my house, my family, and everything else. And as you'll know, that is a challenge in itself. So there's a real compromise and balance between trying to continue to do the good work that I do, taking some of the challenging comments and everything else that comes my way, but also trying to make it pay so that I don't have to make a decision at some point to go, it's just not viable for me to be able to be in this space doing the work that I'm doing. Because the book wasn't to make money, and it hasn't, and it won't, because we chose to go for a big publisher to get it as far and wide as possible. The podcast, I don't make anything from. No. The newsletter, I don't. This thing I've just done with Neurodiversity by Design doesn't pay. So the reality is I do a lot of things that and
I'm not paying you for your time.
Just no. It's
completely gratis.
Exactly.
Very grateful for.
So I think people are just to comment on that. I think it's also respecting the value of the neurodiversity community at the moment is a very lean community. And the way that we have to fund that is via the small amount of support that we get from some organizations to do some work. So that is the reality of the world that we live in. And maybe people don't always appreciate and respect that fact. But I think if we think about looking after ourselves first and foremost, because if we don't look after ourselves, we've got nothing to give. And I would say that to everybody. If you're not looking after yourself, your own mental health, your own well-being, then you're going to have nothing to give to anybody else. And I think that's really important.
I think that's a really great reflection, Theo. And it sends me, you talk about visually, it visually sends me to the old oxygen mask analogy, where put your own oxygen mask on first before you look after others, right? Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, beautifully put. Yeah, that is it, isn't it? And it's as simple as that. And I think we forget that often. And just be mindful recently of trying to step back and make sure that I'm sustainable, right?
Yes.
Which is important.
Yeah, no, thank you. And just let me, on behalf of our listeners and myself, just say thank you so much for giving up your time and for doing this podcast, and for essentially what this is all about is helping others, and helping others in our community and beyond as well, not just neurodiverse individuals, but everyone, neuro NT or ND alike. This is for everybody. It's inclusive. There is no ND versus NT. It's all about inclusivity and bringing everyone together, right? That's what the cause, the campaign, that's what it's all about. It's not about diversity or kind of like some kind of conflict between different sections of people. It's about bringing all intersectionalities together, because that's how we get real unity, right? How can people connect with you, Theo? People who are listening to this and who have enjoyed our conversation today, and who aren't connected with you already, where do you hang out? How can people connect with you?
So if you've blocked me first, you need to unblock me.
I'll get straight on that after this.
Yeah, joking aside, you can find me on LinkedIn, Theo Smith UK. You can find me on Twitter, Theo Smith UK. You can find me on Instagram, Theo A Smith UK. You can find me a little bit on TikTok. You can find me pretty much anywhere and everywhere, sharing a bit of content. I do it better in some places than others. I've got a podcast, Neurodiversity, Eliminate Kryptonite Enabling Superheroes. I mean, I sometimes get a lot of information through LinkedIn, sales information, what have you. So by all means, if I don't respond immediately, please do chase me. It's not that I don't care. It's sometimes that my busy brain will see it and something else will take over, and then I'll miss it. So chase me down if you want to contact me. And I do like talking with people generally on the topic of neurodiversity and recruitment.
Thank you so much, Theo. And we'll share those links between us after this, and we'll pop all of those in the podcast notes so that people can kind of connect. And we'll also put a nice link to the book that you and the amazing Professor Amanda Kirby wrote around neurodiversity at work. We'll drop a link in there for people who might want to check out your fantastic book as well. But finally, once again, thank you so much for coming on the ND Superstars podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege having you on today, Theo. And on behalf of all our listeners, thank you, and take care of yourself and each other.